Welcome to Total Retail Talks, your podcast channel for retail knowledge.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of Total Retail Talks. I'm Joe Keenan, the Editor-in-Chief of Total Retail. I'm pleased to be joined on today's episode by Alex Faherty. Alex is the co-founder and CEO of Faherty. We're going to talk about that brand, its growth in terms of its expansion into physical retail, including its newly reopened Soho flagship store, and a little bit of what's to come from Faherty in the near future. So, Alex, I'm happy to have a conversation with you, and welcome to the show.
All right. Thanks, Jeff. Great to be here.
So let's kind of jump into, maybe to start, just tell us a little bit about Faherty as a brand. For those that I mentioned, you're the CEO, also the co-founder. Tell us a little bit about the origin story of the brand and kind of where the business is at today.
Sure. So Faherty was a college essay that my twin brother Mike wrote his senior year in high school about creating a brand that merged our love of the beach and kind of surf style with style that we loved from New York City, and sort of combining the two things into one brand. And so since we were 18, my brother Mike and I said, one day we're gonna have this clothing brand. And so Mike went and worked at Ralph Lauren as a designer for about 10 years. I worked in finance and kind of learned business, saved money. And 13 years ago, we quit our jobs to sort of follow this childhood dream of ours. It's kind of like the brand is our lifestyle, the things we love. So it's been a really amazing journey.
The brand started, if I'm correct, as a digital native brand, right? Started online.
Yeah, so we started online. We turned our website on in April 2013. And then the first time we got into sort of physical retail was hybrid physical retail. We built a mobile store shortly after we started that we started traveling the country with and doing events and festivals and pop-up shops. So that was our first kind of introduction into retail. Then we had a little showroom store connected to our office right after that. And then we opened sort of our first real physical store about 3 years in Malibu, California.
Okay. So as of today, the brand has grown to more than 80 store locations, right? So tell us a little bit about that journey kind of, and where physical retail kind of sits in the overall growth strategy of the business today.
Yeah, since we opened up those first few stores, even the mobile store, I loved physical retail. Like, I loved in-person interactions with customers. I love customers being able to try the clothes on, learn about the brand in person. So I think I took an affinity. I know my brother Mike took affinity to just sort of physical retail. And so I think, when we thought about the strategy of the brand and where we were, we always had physical retail in the plans. The problem is, physical retail can be expensive, especially cash up front. So we slowly got into it. We signed our first long-term lease in 2016. And between 2016 and 2019, over that kind of 3-year period, we opened up almost 10 stores. So we were at around 10 or 11 stores when COVID hit. And when COVID hit, obviously it was just such a challenging time for everyone in the industry. And we really wanted to kind of see how things would play out. And our business started doing really well, especially our online business, in May of 2020. And we opened up, at that time, of those 10 stores that we had, about half of those stores were in vacation destinations. And so when those stores opened up, when the restrictions were lifted, those stores did insanely well. So we actually did really well in Q3 of 2020. And those retail stores that were in the Hamptons or in Nantucket or in some parts of Southern California and beach towns did incredibly well. So we actually had this look where, when everyone was like, retail is dead, let's close all of our stores, online is the future, we actually saw in half of our stores, actually, that was not the case. Business was booming better than ever. So as brands were closing stores and everyone was kind of, rents were getting cheaper and cheaper, we really made this big bet that now is going to be an amazing time to start signing leases and expand the brand into amazing, markets that we hadn't been in, and find great spaces. So between end of 2020, 21, and 22, I know almost 40 leases, long-term leases that really got us a footprint, because we were sort of at 10, 11 stores. It's just hard to run it's hard to run 10, 11 stores. We're either going to really go after retail or we're not. Mm-hmm. And so COVID was really the catalyst for that. And now we're up to 90 stores today, which is insane.
Yeah, that's quite a growth trajectory. In terms of the markets that you target, you've kind of got that coastal vibe, but also kind of city center as well, thinking about. So, are there particular markets or geographic areas that are really front of mind for you in terms of physical retail?
Yeah, I think, you said it is. I think vacation tourist destinations are such a big part of the brand. I think the brand is really connected with travel and life's greatest moments. And so I think a lot of our customers, when they go on vacation, they think of Faherty as the brand to wear on vacation. So, we're in beach towns, we're in mountain towns, we're in, tourist cities. And then, we've also expanded into some really great suburban main streets. And then we're in some great lifestyle centers as well. So it's kind of like a three-pronged strategy. It's like the city center, so make sure we've got great real estate in the best cities, have these really great destination stores, and then kind of have these really cool neighborhood stores. And so those are the kind of the three. And we're now in that the fourth phase, which is starting to look at some of the bigger malls and sort of assessing and analyzing our opportunities in those.
So let's talk about the kind of the experience you're offering within the walls of those physical retail locations. I know the brand is really designed to be experiential. I alluded to the fact you've kind of newly reopened your flagship store in Soho in Manhattan. So talk a little bit about in-store experience and what you're trying to create for the customers coming into a Faherty store.
Yeah, so I think the first thing is, my when we started the brand, my mom joined us early on, and she by trade was an interior decorator. So as we started opening up some of these early stores, Rom really took like an interior decorating approach to the store. So they had a real like feel like they were a home, they were inviting, they were cool. It wasn't just fixtures and lights. And I think that's kind of carried its way through kind of all of our stores. We're really trying to like have the store have a personality. Every store is designed differently with a different vibe, all kind of within the Faherty, but unique and interesting. So that's been super important. So when the customer walks in, they're like, "Oh, this is a great place to shop." And then, I think what we've really tried to do is, the brand, as we like when we think about the fabrics and the way we want people to feel in the brand, like how do we create a shopping experience where people just like they just feel comfortable, like they feel comfortable in the clothes, they feel comfortable in the environment. So much of that is the people that we hire and making sure we bring hospitality front and center to our guests that walk in the doors. We actually did something in the last couple of years, which was really cool. We've gotten to know Danny Myers, who's a big restaurateur in New York City and has run some of the most successful restaurants. And he kind of like has revolutionized hospitality in restaurants. And so we started working with him and his group to really think like, how can we do that in shopping and retail? And it's been a really cool partnership to work with them to really bring some of those best practices to life in our own physical stores. So for us, it's the locations, the vibe of the store, and then, the people and the experience people have when they shop with us.
Yeah, I like that idea of kind of the melding of retail and hospitality, right? The experience and kind of the that you're trying to provide to your guests.
Joe, let me just real quick talk about that one a little bit more
Yeah,
because I think
yeah.
it's a point I sort of missed to make is so what we ended up doing in Soho was we've been in one space for the last 6 years. And so we decided to lease the space next door and so double the footprint of the store, which obviously in Soho, New York is like just very expensive. Rents are really high. But I think as far as like creating that experience where, as we're thinking about and becoming a global brand and having that footprint where people can really experience like the space and the energy of the brand. So we actually, in this most recent Soho flagship, we teamed up with amazing designer, Oliver from Home Studios, and really made it feel like it feels like the coolest little vibey boutique hotel that you've ever been in. You're in the lobby but there's clothes and you can shop and the music and the scents. And we worked with one of our favorite bars in the West Village to create a custom canned cocktail for customers who come in and just really bring in the brand to life in such a cool way. And, in order to do that, obviously it's expensive and you got to take some big swings, but I think this is like a whole new version of how Faherty shows up. It's a little bit more elevated, especially for that Soho customer. I mean, where we are in Soho, it's so many luxury brands, and we sort of, we're more of like an aspirational luxury brand. And so for us to kind of show up in that world, it's just continued to evolve and try new things, I think is a big piece of how we're trying to do it. And we'll see how it does and then iterate from there.
Yeah, that's what I was going to follow up with, Alex, in terms of kind of that almost is like the pilot experience at your Soho location that could potentially be rolled out to that kind of style, that model to be rolled out to additional Faherty stores.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially the fixture package. The store's a little bit more open, a little bit more, room to meander, rolling that out. We've also rolled out in the store, and we're working on some other concepts around, we opened up a restaurant a few years ago called Sun and Waves, which is a play on our logo. And it's a all day breakfast and lunch kind of cafe, market, coffee shop. And so we've got some interesting plans of how we can kind of integrate that food concept with our clothing concept into sort of one experience for the customer that's been really fun to build.
So I want to get your perspective. Faherty is available in multiple channels for consumers. So we've talked about stores, obviously the e-commerce site, wholesale business. You're touching and engaging consumers in social, I imagine, as well. So there's these email. There's many different channels that you're communicating and engaging with your customers. Talk a little bit about that brand experience and how you try to pull it together to create a consistent experience, no matter which channel the customer may be engaging Faherty in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they all, it's a great question because they all, they're obviously all one team, but they operate, slightly differently. And for physical retail, so much of it is about the in-store execution, the visuals, the vibe, the team. So it's much more of a day-to-day building the culture, building the energy, building the passion of what we're doing at Faherty. I think that's, for me as a CEO, is like such a big part of how I spend my time visiting stores, building relationships with our teams across the country. And so that's much more like an experiential, emotional thing. And then, the e-commerce business is such a image-based business. It's so much based on the campaign imagery and the studio shots and the copy. It's much more of like a creative business because Shopify and all the tech that's been built. It's sort of like we're on a kind of an even playing field. And so it really comes down to the product. People got to love the product, but they also got to love the way it looks, the way it's merchandised on the site. So it's just a different muscle, definitely more of a creative muscle for sure. And then the third business, which is a really important business for us, which is about 30% of our business, is wholesale. So selling into other stores across the country. And, for that, that's so much about just picking the right partners and just having great relationships and partnerships with each of the different partners. We have almost 400 different accounts to carry Faherty, and making sure we have the right account execs and the right teams working with each of those stores to make sure that they are invested in the brand, they're paying attention to the presentation. And then I think the big thing is like, what are the larger department stores that you partner with? And we've partnered with Nordstrom in a meaningful way, and that's been an awesome relationship, great company, great people, very much aligned. We've got a great partnership with Bloomingdale's as well, a great partnership with Dillard's. So those are three of our bigger, sort of larger departments. And so very much it's same thing, building relationships with them, making sure they care about us, making sure we deliver a great product. And all that comes together to how any customer experiences Faherty. How can we make sure it's somewhat consistent? And, but that's really comes down to the people that we have in each of those channels that really gets the brand and feels what we want to give to the customer. So as I said, it goes back to this like any business. Our business is such a people business, talent business, culture business, to make sure that the brand really shows up the right way to our customers.
Do you, in terms of that customer, do you see that they're channel specific? Do you see that they're crossing over between channels? I imagine your best customers are crossing over between multiple channels. What is the behavior you're seeing from your customers specific to channel?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely seeing physical retail over index as far as customer preference of where to shop. So I think one of the reasons we've continued to open up stores is our customer really, really loves being able to go into a store, find it, work with an associate, So we've seen definitely like I would say relative in our business, like a seismic shift towards preference for physical retail. Some of that is, I think, our price point, the fabrics of our products. I think it's just a much more of a sensual feeling that I think people want when they shop Faherty. So that's definitely changed, obviously, like some of our way we've invested, for sure. And then I think on the digital business, what we found, what we've kind of seen over the last couple of years is it's really been a huge avenue for growing. So we have two genders. We have a men's business and a women's business. We've definitely, from a growing the women's business, online is a huge avenue for that, just because addressable market's so big, so much competition, so much shopping, but with great product, great looking product and execution, like you can really build market share. So the online business for women's is a huge, huge focus for us as we build that. Because in physical retail, we're a little bit constrained by space, because men's is a larger business. So how do we give women space? Whereas online, we can give women's as much space as possible. So I think as we build out, a new gender in a bigger way, we're starting to build out some accessory categories as well. Online is just such a great place to do that, and then test it and see how it does. And then as we open up new stores and renovate our existing stores, can kind of move around the space. So, when we've built our first business plan in 2012, we said that our business was going to be, 40% retail, 30% online, and 30% wholesale. And 13 years later, that's basically the split of our business. So I think we've been very focused on that omni-channel business, even when people were like, physical retail, bad idea, wholesale is a bad idea. I think we just really believed in that's how the customer really wants to shop at the end of the day. And I think we've been fortunate that, some of our, our wholesale partners have performed very well over the last few years and been able to really help support our growth too.
And to your point, the wealth of data that you're able to collect, particularly online, that can be leveraged to help inform in-store decisions, right? Your merchandising, the type of customer that's coming in the door. I imagine that's a real, fertile ground for helping make decisions about physical store presence.
Yeah, because now, now with 90 stores, if we want to make a product decision to be like, oh, we're going to roll this out to the whole fleet, like that's a lot of inventory.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to, really use online as a test, really dig into reviews and see what people are really reacting to when it comes to click rate and price to value, you can just get so much data. So as we build out new stores, expand our footprint, and we got to make these bigger inventory decisions across the fleet, online is it's such a great place to test things. And that's what we'll do. We'll test, for the first, we'll test, by 500 units, the minimum for the first time around, and then grow it from there. But online is really that place where we can test it, and it's so helpful.
So as you scale the business, there's always that concern is, as you grow, you kind of lose that authenticity, really what is at the core of the brand. And you try to, some brands try to be everything to everyone, and they kind of lose the connection with that core customer that they have. So how do you kind of preserve that authenticity, that core connection that you have with your customers, while at the same time, right, you still want to grow the business? So, how do you think about that, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, we've gone through some different, even in the 13 years, we've gone through some different cycles of the business. And, 2020 to 2023 was like a huge growth cycle for us, where we started opening up all these stores and the online business was doing great. And we definitely benefited from a post-COVID casualization of a customer, which is such, that's really our sweet spot. And, but we definitely saw the business slow down in 2023 into 2024 from, growing 50% a year to more of a double-digit growth rate. And in that sort of growth change, I think we really had to, Mike and I and Carrie, my wife, who's a co-founder, and my mom and the team, really think about why are we doing this? What do we really it's one thing to start the brand and all of a sudden, wow, the brand is it's been successful and we're going to make it. And then it's what do we really want to do with it? I think that was a big chance for us to really decide, this is what we want to do the rest of our lives. We love this brand. It's everything we could have ever dreamed of. Let's just be very, very focused on exactly what you said, keeping the integrity of the brand, growing it at a very moderate rate so that it doesn't it doesn't get out of hand, and we make like the right choices for the brand. And so one of our core values is timeless. And so I think that's like how we're trying to think of like, we want Faherty to be around in 100 years. So how do we make sure we're making decisions now that allow that? And so there's definitely been some times where we've like sacrificed growth recently to like, that growth will be there in 5 years, or it'll be there in 7 years, versus trying to pull all that growth forward. So I think that's been really helpful. Like if we can grow this business, 10% a year for the next 30 years, like it's going to be a very, very successful business, and not losing sight of that.
And, you're a co-founder, your family's involved in the business, your wife, your brother, your mother, this is an emotional, investment. This is your life's work, right? It's not just another side project. This is kind of your life, right?
I think about it. I mean, the amount I think about this brand, and I know Mike thinks about this brand and Carrie thinks about this brand, like, every interaction with people, what clothes are you wearing? Like, what are people saying about the brand? I mean, we're just so maniacally focused on making sure we're making those right decisions because our name is on it. Like, I think when you put your name on something, it means so much more. And also the brand is like, it's a extension of us too, which is really cool. Also stressful, but cool. And there's very few brands that have that, so if there's something that you can't really it's hard to put words to it. It's just kind of there because of how we named it. The fact that this is Mike's college, our dream since we were in high school. And that's what's, I definitely feel like our customers hopefully notice that and appreciate the brand for that. Cause there's a lot of brands that are just out there to make money. Like we make a lot of decisions when it comes to using better materials and more sustainable fabrics that are more expensive, that a lot of brands just don't do because they're more focused on the bottom line. And I think for us, it's more the brand, and that is a brand that we care about and we're proud of. And we own the business. We have some small investors, but we control, the decisions that the company makes. And I think we want to make sure we can keep it that way, hopefully for generations and generations.
So we'll close with this, Alex, in terms of thinking ahead. What's your vision? What's next from Faherty? What can we expect? And kind of how can you position the business to succeed? There's obviously macro challenges that we talked about, but your business has kind of weathered some of that. Tell us a little bit about kind of the vision going forward for Faherty.
So longer term vision is, Faherty will be a global brand in 10 years, that's just a really cool thing to envision. We're ready, have a little store in France, and we've got department store distribution in Europe, and we're sort of really working on. So I think being able for the rest of the world to shop Faherty and to see Faherty in different places across the world is like a super cool, important thing for the future of the brand. I think people are going to see Faherty, are going to know Faherty a little bit more as women's brand as well. We've been historically more of a men's brand, so we've got a lot of really great talent we brought on board and energy around building out the women's product, which we're really, really excited about. So we want to be a dual gender brand. That's a huge focus for us. And then I think you're just going to hopefully continue to see Faherty. Like we have this saying that Mike and I say, which is like, the bigger we get, the smaller we want to feel. Mm-hmm. And that's not an easy thing to do. So I think that's something that Mike and I are constantly thinking about and talking about, because there's obviously some things when it comes to the infrastructure of the business and operations that have to scale but when it comes to the sort of the way the brand shows up to those customers that are the most loyal ones that love us, like how do we keep that feel of the brand? And I think that's the special sauce that us as the brand people have to figure out over time and make sure that we have our priorities in the right place.
So you've done a great job growing the business to date. I'm sure there are more exciting and important things to look for coming forward from Faherty. I want to take the opportunity to thank Alex Faherty, again, the co-founder and CEO of Faherty, for joining us on this episode of Total Retail Talks. Thank you, Alex. I really enjoyed talking with you today.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks for listening. For more information on this podcast, please go to mytotalretail.com/podcast for show notes.
Total Retail Talks is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, SiriusXM's Pandora, YouTube, and YouTube Music. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a few moments to rate, review, and subscribe. Thanks, and until next time, this has been Total Retail Talks.